Welcome back to Apex Survival, everybody. Today I want to talk about food storage for emergency situations. No matter who you are or where you are in the world, I want to show you an affordable and effective way to store food using bottles. Let's get to it. When deciding what food you want to store, you want to look for foods that have the longest shelf life possible. Certain foods only have a shelf life of 1 year, which are fine to store, like your flour or your dried fruit. Some have a longer shelf life, like rice and beans and grits. These can last somewhere between 10 to 20 years. Certain foods, like freeze-dried foods, can last 30 years. And then some things almost never go bad, like your sugar, your honey, your hot sauces, your maple syrups and molasses, salt, instant coffee. These things will never go bad if stored properly. Step 1, rinsing your bottles out with a little bit of soap and water. And then we store our bottles in a nice clean place to dry. The next step is to have a clean, sterile working environment. Certain foods do not need to be repackaged for long-term storage. Things like pure vanilla extract, honey, maple syrup, pomegranate molasses, vinegar-based hot sauces are perfectly fine in the packaging they come in. But certain things like beans and rice need to be repackaged. Mylar is the best for food storage. This freeze-dried food is meant to keep this food fresh in a Mylar bag for up to 30 years. This is the best way, but not everybody has access to Mylar bags. Therefore, we have the next best thing, the bottle. I'm going to show you how to do it. Step 1, you're going to need a funnel. What I did is I cut this bottle in half, got 2 caps, glued them together, drilled a hole in the middle, and now we have a coupler for the funnel and the bottle that we'll be storing the food in. This will kind of make it idiot-proof. And with the other half, made that into a cup. So when you're getting food for long-term storage, you want to make sure this is food that you like to eat. Perfect. You don't want to buy 20, 40, 60 pounds of some dried rice or beans that you don't really like. I highly recommend that you buy a small portion first, try it out, make sure everyone in your house likes it. And if someone has some kind of dietary restriction, don't buy like a ton of it. That would be really unfair to the other person in your house to do that. And something else I'd like to share is, this is not the first time I've done this actually. Before the pandemic happened, actually, while the pandemic started, I was out of the country in an African country where my wife is from. And when I heard about the pandemic, I heard that I didn't think much of it at first. I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. But then I heard that the Chinese New Year in Beijing was canceled. I followed Chinese news, and I realized that this is going to be a bigger deal than most other things. And I always kept them with extra food and stuff. But when I heard about the pandemic, I stocked up big time. We went to a big supplier, and I bought, I don't remember how much, I think I bought close to 80 pounds of rice, more in beans, couscous, cooking oil, tons of extra water. And then it turns out that that was actually a really good idea, because the food prices in their country ended up going crazy. I mean, the price of oil, basic things like grains, they get most of their grains imported from other countries, and these prices just went crazy to the point where no one could afford it. Supplies were low, and people were actually trying to fight each other in the stores for this stuff, while my family was doing perfectly fine with their stockpiles of rice and beans. So calories come from the rice. Your protein, minerals, vitamins, they all come from the beans. So you really want to have a variety. Here, I'm doing the chickpeas. And here we have black-eyed peas, navy beans, lentils, small reds, and they're great beans. But as you might know, rice and beans, no matter how you cook it, it gets pretty old after a while. So you really want to mix it up. You want to mix it up with some sugar, cocoa, and flour. The combination of things that you can make with this is pretty extreme. The morale boost that you could give to people with just this alone is huge. Imagine like a bad situation. It's a kid on their birthday, and you make them like a little cupcake. That is a huge deal for the kid. That is a huge morale boost. Another thing is oil. You can never have too much oil. Yes, it will go bad after a while. So you don't want to buy a ton of it, but you definitely want to buy more than you need, because there's so many things you just can't cook without oil, and it gets expensive. For example, in my wife's country, this is 1 gallon of oil. This would have been the equivalent of about $50 US in a country where a man might make $20 a week. So you can see how crazy expensive certain items can get and how rare they can be. Even if it is available, you might not be able to afford it. And when the pandemic started, I bought them about 25 gallons of oil. Or before it started, I bought them 25 gallons. And I didn't know this until I started making this video, but they actually gave a lot of that away to their family members, and I didn't know this. It's not a bad thing. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing they shared. That's good. But my father-in-law's mother, she actually had about this much oil left of used oil and like no food in the house. And they had a ton of food, so they gave her, a gallon of oil and a bunch of rice and lentils and beans and couscous and all the things they like to eat, and flour. Also, they live on the Sahara Desert, so they had family actually drive halfway across the country from the desert to just come and get food. I didn't know that until now, which is awesome. It's actually a good thing. I mean, I'm so glad that I did this. I'm glad I prepared. If I wouldn't have done it, who knows what would have happened, because people were starving to death. Just because you didn't hear about it on the news, it didn't mean that it wasn't happening. People starve to death all the time in Africa. You just don't hear about it until it reaches, 20,000, 50,000, I don't know. But thousands of people starve and you just don't know about it. And they would have been one of them. So, actually these preps really did come in handy. They saved lives. Also, another thing is the family that had to travel from the Sahara, I didn't know this as well, is that they ended up bartering some of that food just to get the gasoline to travel halfway across the country. They told their neighbor that if you can loan us the gas, we'll bring you X amount of oil, beans, rice, couscous, whatever, back with us. And that's how it worked. So it was actually quite beneficial for their neighbor as well. He had the gasoline, no food. They had no food, no gas, but it's a way to get it. So it all worked out. That's the barter system in action. That is, that's pretty amazing if you ask me. Once you have your long-term food package, it's important to find a proper place to store it. Most people's pantries will do fine as long as it's in a cool, dry place with no temperature fluctuation, and most importantly, out of direct sunlight. Direct sunlight will ruin food quicker than anything. Now, a pantry might not work for everybody. You might not have enough space. You might have people in your home who don't take care of food properly. They leave things open. They run their mouth about how much food you have. You might have guests come over and see that you have an abundance of food, and that could be dangerous, even though you shouldn't be having those kind of people in your house to begin with. But you never know. You want to keep it a secret as best as possible. So if your pantry doesn't work, try to hide it. I know in my wife's country, we didn't put food in the pantry. We actually kept it in a special hidden chest away from people. Obviously, the 25 gallons of oil had to be stored outside of that chest, but it worked. It all worked. And also, I know that it's hard to own firearms in most places in the world unless you live in the United States. But if you're able to, it's very important that you have your pantry pistol ready to go. All right? That is very important. You never know when an intruder's going to come in your house and you're trying to cook some food and you need to ask them to leave and mean it. Well, everyone, this is the end of the video. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. I'm really glad that I got to share my story with you. A few basic stuff about how to store food. Like this could literally save lives. If you're in a developing country, a third world country, or even the United States, this right here, this is all you need. This will work. Yeah, Mylar is the best. I use Mylar. I prefer Mylar. It works. It's built to last 30 years. This is the next best thing. It works.